Hello, Laurent. Hello, Amy, Daniel, Jacqueline, Renee. Hello, Nadia. Hello. Wonderful. Oh, so great. I'm so excited. This is our first 2022 event. Very excited to have you all here. Doesn't it feel like the year's already been so long? It really does. Which is why I'm like, I can't believe it's our first event and the year's only 11 days old. Okay, welcome everyone. For those of you who do not know me or only know me through email, it's wonderful to see your face. My name is Meg Bolger. I am the captain of the ship over here at Facilitator Cards, and welcome to the playground. This is an experiment that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm really excited that you all have joined in to do this experiment with us. So the goal of today is to, well, let me tell you how this kind of session came to be. So people for the last year and a half have been buying these things called facilitator cards, which each card is a individual kind of process or activity structure that we can use to engage in our facilitations or our trainings or our workshops or our meetings. And people kept saying, like, I want to try out new facilitator cards, but I've never seen them. I've never seen this one done, or I've never been a participant, or I don't want to try it with a group that I'm working with or with my colleagues before I get to try it with kind of in a safe playground space. And so that is how this event came to be. In the future, we're going to have I hope we'll have folks like you who are going to be trying out and facilitating things that maybe you haven't facilitated before. Today, I'm just going to be the one who's facilitating, and you all get to just learn by doing as participants. So we're going to get through a few different facilitation processes. We'll kind of be flipping back and forth between you being a participant and you having your facilitator hat on. So we'll kind of be swapping back and forth between those throughout, and it will be very clear. Maybe I'll put on the hat to really indicate what headspace we're in, but it'll be pretty clear as well. So what we're going to do to start off, first of all, I do this. I know it's cheesy, but I really like it. I would love to know where you're calling in from. If you would put that in the chat, I just like to see where we span, because for me, that's one of the gifts of virtual facilitation, is that this group of people probably can't exist in physical space together for numbers of reasons, but just logistically as well. And so it just makes me happy when I see oh, we are scattered. Cool. All right. And that also gives me a moment to create some breakout rooms. So here what we're going to do. Okay. Okay. Okay, awesome. So here's what is going to happen. All right, we're I love basically Toronto. That's really awesome. I love that. Yeah, so we're going all across the US today and up to Canada. Wonderful. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with just a quick get to know someone else in the session activity. We're going to do that with declarative pairs. Okay, so here's how it works. Also, if you have facilitator cards, I will give you the list that we go through at the end. I just wanted to let you know at the beginning. So here's how it works. I'm going to put you into a random breakout room. Each person is going to have 2 minutes to tell the other person about yourself. But the only way you get to tell them about you is by saying a sentence that begins with I am. Okay, so for 2 minutes, I want you to talk about yourself only using the sentence I am blank. Okay, and then after those 2 minutes are up, we will switch. I will prompt you and say, it's time to switch, and you'll wrap up and then you'll switch to the other person. If at any point you get stalled, the other person can say, tell me more, and you'll try. And if you just burn out and after a minute, you're just I don't have anything else to say, just sit there in silence with each other and smile. And then we'll switch in the 2 minutes. But all you can say for those 2 minutes is I am blank. So that's how it's going to work. Once you get into your rooms, you can do a quick hello, like, hey, how are you? This is my name, and decide who goes first. I would recommend going with the person who has the name earliest in the alphabet, so you don't actually have to make that decision. And I'll say go. I'll broadcast a go, and we'll start that 2-minute timer. Any questions before I put you into your breakout rooms? Okay. Get settled once you're there, and then I will bring you back. See you in a little bit. Hello, hello. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Jackie.
Oh, I gotta unmute. There we go. Hi, Meg. How are you?
I'm good. How was that?
It was great.
Yeah. Cool. Hello, welcome back. All right. I know people are still chatting. They're just doing their own thing, but as we are waiting for folks to come back, and this is also going to be the question I'm going to ask everyone, any initial thoughts on like what that was like doing that? What was that process like?
It definitely changed the way I would typically respond to, tell me about yourself, or what do you do? So that was interesting.
In what ways, Jacqueline, how did it change? How did it change what you usually shared?
I think your original, especially in a setting like this where it's professional, it feels like this is my job title, this is my organization. And we used much more adjectives to describe who we were and then how that related to maybe our professional life.
Okay, cool. So I was just getting some initial impressions of like, what was it like to do that process? Any initial reactions people would like to share?
I thought I do something similar about what people do and what they produce. And so it felt like I was treating myself like a product. What are the features, that I'm using to add value? But it was also awkward because it's those things that I use to maybe prepare for a job interview or to help prepare others for that. But then if you don't do it, if you're not immediately involved in that activity, it's kind of hard to do because we're not looking at ourselves quite like that.
Interesting.
I'm not, so.
Yeah.
I had an interesting experience because I was with Jen, and Jen started off seeing that she's earlier in the alphabet than I am. And she started talking about who she is essentially and not her job. And I thought that was really a good way to start because it got me thinking. I was planning already just to talk about what I do in life, but she was much more who she is as a person and what interests she has and what she is in touch with. So that was great. That was great. Thank you.
Cool. So it brought you to a really different place than you were expecting.
Different place than I had intended.
Any kind of insights around the like facilitation of it, like something you felt like was important or would have changed, like something that I could have done that would have changed the activity for you?
Just in what Nadia just said, what I heard in Nadia saying is that like there is the ability in how you framed it that like if it's like there's choice to go however deep you are prepared to go. So like if I like or like into essence or like personhood, I thought was really beautiful.
How, Andrew, if I can ask a follow-up question, although you can pass if you don't want to answer it. How do you think as a facilitator, I could modulate that? Like if I was like, I really want people to go more towards the deep stuff, or I don't have any, like, I'm just going to let you choose. Do you think there's a way? Oh yeah. Or Kat's got your back as well. And
yeah. I just like, I would tap into kind of what Daniel talked about. I also want to hear what Kat says too, but like tap into what Daniel said that, and in like in the framing of it, say like, hey, like you might, frame the whole thing as like, you might be tempted to talk about what you do, but like, let's talk more about like who we are or our beings.
Cool. Okay. Well, we got so many thoughts now. Okay, cool. We'll go Kat and then Renee and then Jen.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of doing a similar activity, like doing this as a warm up at another workshop I have coming up soon. And one thing that I've been thinking about is like how to make sure to kind of like steer them away from like just like fluffy stuff to like something a little bit more like Dan said, like essential. Or like, or Andrew said, like kind of like more the essence of who we are. And like one thing I'm thinking of doing before sending them in is kind of showing, like sharing screen and saying like, there's a diagram in a book called Good Talk that talks about the well of conversation. And like at the surface, like of the water, there's facts. And then below that, there's feelings. And then below that, there's insights and later potential. And he talks about as you move through a conversation, if it gets deep, you usually get to the good stuff, which is insights and potential. And so that's sort of one way of framing. It's like you can stay in facts, but try to also get to another level, which is the feelings and also insights. I also like what Bobby wrote in the chat, including the phrase "I value." That would be an interesting way to introduce yourself.
I think the word, like you could, I think "I value" is such a way to like just be like, I don't even want you to talk about what you are. I just want you to talk about things you value, right? That the declarative sentence stem itself is so impactful to shaping how it goes. And one thing, Kat, that you made me think of was just that I also only did this for 2 minutes, but if I had made you do it for 5, like if I had like how different that would be, that like maybe in that, I love the diagram that you're talking about. And I would love if you could like link us to it, or if you could share, or even afterward, like don't feel the need to go find it right now. But one thought I have is just like in the first minute, I want you to do this level. And then the second minute, I want you to go here. And then if you're up for it, like try to get to that in the third minute and see if people can kind of like walk themselves down that well or lower themselves down that well. That was a thought I had. Okay. I'm going to throw it over to Renee. Are you taking us somewhere else, Renee?
I am. And so I love all the sharing that's gone so far, and I echo much of that. And I'm going to intentionally choose to take the other side of the spectrum. There is value to not giving that direction. And so there is value to allowing that space for psychological safety, for folks to get to psychological safety when they do. And so there is this aspect of putting them out for 2 minutes and then bringing back like we are right now and being able to hear that sharing and then gain additional psychological safety of if you didn't go deeper this time, going, oh, like I think I might feel safer to do that this time, and then going back in and doing another turn.
Absolutely. I think it is a risk. Personally, I think this is like an oddly risky activity when you start making it longer, like because you start really asking people to like spontaneously go there, which I think can be intimidating for people. So I chose the 2-minute time frame pretty intentionally. And I think you're right. Like it allows people to go, if you're like, all right, I'd swim in the deep end, let's like jump in, you know, like Nadia and maybe Jen did, but also like, if you don't want to swim in the deep end, like you have that option to really like build towards it. So yeah, Jen, I'm throwing it over to you.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to add, if there is this intention of going deeper that I've done before, is to actually talk about who to like set it up of who you are as a human being, not what you do, not your job title, and then give people like to create a little bit of safety is give people like a minute to write some things down and then go in. So it's not so like, I don't know what to say off the cuff, but like they can actually be a little more intentional. So that was my other thought.
Yes, totally. There is a facilitator card called Minute Papers. I mean, there's also just a proper process that all of us, that so many of us use all the time, right? This Minute Papers. And I think Minute Papers, just that idea of write something down before I ask you to share, for so many people, like you're like, okay, good. Because I'm not an off the cuff person, right? Like some of us are out loud processors and just like, that's how we process. But some people, that like 1 minute reflection will allow them to feel so much more like able to show up in that reflection. Yeah, some people would think it's introvert friendly, and I think it is like introvert friendlier. And also, if you're like not that person, you could even just sit there and be like, I don't need to write, I'm just going to talk. Like it doesn't kind of hurt the extra. It doesn't like really impact the extroverts as much, or the people who out loud process. So I love that kind of pairing of the two. I think that's really great. Okay, well, we just juiced we just got a lot of juice out of that orange, which I loved. And there's even more in the chat that we haven't even touched on. The idea of stacking prompts, like progressively getting deeper, and the idea of changing the prompt with I value. I love both of those. Okay, we're gonna do another process. We're gonna like putting declarative pairs, knowing we've checked that one off, and I want to do another one. So, okay, so we're going to have a chat about a topic as a group, and we're going to do it with this structure called Matchstick Conversations. In person, what I would typically do is give everybody a certain amount of like little tokens. It's called Matchstick because like you can do it with matchsticks, you can do it with paper clips, any like just little thing you have a lot of. In this space, we're going to do it a little bit differently. And basically, you're going to have two opportunities to share. And I'd love if everybody uses both. You don't have to, but you can. The first way is out loud, and the second way is in the chat. So those are kind of like your two tokens. So you can use one out loud, one in the chat. You can use them in whichever order. And what we're going to do is I'm going to throw a topic out there, and we're just going to have a conversation, ideally until everyone's tokens are used. And we'll see kind of timing wise how that goes. So you can share once in the chat and once out loud. Once you've shared out loud, please put yourself on mute. Many of you are on mute anyway. If you have a quiet background, it's helpful if you can unmute now so that we can tell kind of like how many of us have shared and how many of us haven't. If you don't, and you're like, no, I'm not unmuting, that's totally fine. And I'd love to try to hear from everyone, once out loud and once in the chat. And we'll see what that process is like. Okay, here's the topic at hand. The topic is, can anyone learn to be a facilitator? Okay, yeah. Anyone want to kick us off?
Yes.
I just heard a yes, but I didn't catch who it was.
Jackie Beck.
Jackie Beck, you say yes, Jackie. Do you want to say any more? Just a hard yes, and I'm out.
Yes, I totally believe that people can learn pretty much anything, within reason. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jackie.
So, and this is Myron. So I think that I absolutely agree with you, Jackie. I think that everyone can be a facilitator, but I think it really depends on the types of facilitation tools that are used based on who that person is. So for example, if I'm an introvert, I may opt to facilitate large groups of 1,000 people in large conferences because I can automate a bunch of those things and I can still get to the goals of what we were trying to accomplish with facilitation based on my style.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Jackie.
I think that it actually should be a skill that like everybody knows, because if you think about it, in any kind of workplace, no matter what job you have, for the most part, at least in basic corporate America, it's like we all facilitate meetings, and I think that there's a lot to meeting culture and how sometimes they're boring and they don't get to the point. And I think a part of that is because people don't know how to facilitate, and when they hear facilitator, they don't directly correlate it to their position. So even managers, if they knew how to facilitate better conversations, then maybe they would be able to help their employees. So I think overall it should be something that maybe more people dive into. And I think everybody has the ability to do it because they do it all the time, just maybe not, super effectively.
So this is what I would add. I think that anybody can if they actually want to learn it. Like I have a CEO right now who I keep trying to give facilitation, like ideas, skills. And he's like, I don't want to do it.
Mhm.
So I think there's a capacity, I would say yes, but an interest and, like a real openness to learn how to do it, I think is like a criteria.
Nadia?
Yes, I believe the same, that you can learn how to be a facilitator, but the desire has to be there. Not everybody wants to do this kind of thing. I think with a right mentorship and with having the right tools with you and having somebody that can help you out at the beginning, you probably can facilitate, but the desire has to be there. Not everybody wants to do that kind of thing.
I see Amy, and I'll throw it to you, Amy, but I also want to invite, if anybody's like, I don't think so, I would love to hear dissents or just different, like, yeah, we're all just like so encouraging and I love it, but I just want to welcome anyone who's like, absolutely not. Amy, I'm kicking it over to you.
I think with the opportunity to practice, anyone can become at least proficient in facilitating, but I think it depends on kind of our definition of what a facilitator is and what facilitation looks like. And are we asking if someone can become a facilitator that people enjoy hearing from, or if they're a facilitator who facilitates? So I think it depends on that definition.
Bobby?
Hey, Meg.
Yes.
You want hands up? I'm just gonna.
I just saw Bobby, so I'll kick it to Bobby and then I'll kick it to you, Vivian.
Sure.
I will play the devil's advocate, and I don't think everybody can be a facilitator. Certainly not everybody can be a facilitator that you want to be facilitated by. And some people aren't interested in that skill. And I think our optimism that everyone can do everything is misplaced.
Okay, Vivian.
I'm going to go and be with Bobby on this, and I'm going to say that I believe that anybody can make a meeting happen, and they can know Robert's rules, and they can know what they've been shown or lived through themselves. And until I experienced really good facilitation, I didn't even know that I didn't know something. And I find that one of the challenges that I have is when I'm working with a group who have done things a certain way for a very long time, it's very hard to break in and say there's this other way. From there, you do need mentorship and support. And that's very hard to tap into. And if people don't have access to that, I think that maybe, yes, sure, but it's like, can I hit that chest over there with a penny when I flick it with my head? It's a little bit, when there's no intention, it's a little bit of a hit or miss.
Renee.
So I'm both a yes and a no on this. So I think anybody can learn to be a facilitator, a good facilitator, but it takes a lot of practice. And for some folks, it takes more than for others. Then the second layer is topic. Can anybody facilitate any topic? There are certain topics that do require a certain level of expertise. And so for me in DE and I get nervous when folks are like, yeah, I can do DE and I read this book. So.
So I might be I probably am the only person on that call that is not a facilitator, and I've never facilitated a workshop. So just the idea of like stating that I cannot become one, just like no, if I want to, I will become one. And I believe like nobody is born like good at music or good at math or good at facilitation. Like it's something like you learn because you're interested in it. So I need to feel like if I want to become a facilitator one day, and if I worked hard at it, I will become a good facilitator one day. So I don't know if that channels anybody's, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, to add a little bit, I do agree with. Oh, go
Myron,
on, sorry.
Did you share out loud already?
I did.
Okay. Does anybody want to give Myron their out loud token? Okay, Tim's gonna give you a token. Go for it, Myron.
Thank you. I learned a tool right there. Thank you so much. I'm gonna buy a facilitator hat. That was awesome. I agree that not everyone can be effective everywhere as a facilitator, But what I was talking about earlier about like your style, you can pick your spots. This also mirrors some of the things that Renee was saying as well. So like the topic, the context, the objective. So for example, if I've never studied psychology, then it would be very difficult for me to be effective in a group setting for people who are recovering from addiction or something like that. So it's really important to choose the context, the topic, and your style to determine whether you're going to be effective being like in the facilitator's hat or supporting that facilitator logistically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just share as a person, not in my facilitator role, just like chiming in on this conversation, something that as somebody who started my work in social justice spaces, there were people who were like, I really want people to learn. And I was like, but you don't want to teach them. Like you want them to be better, but you don't actually want to be part of their journey. And the reason that jumps out to me is like, I think maybe in different, like it's also to me I don't mean time of life as in you have to be 30 or 40, but I just mean like certain times of my life, I think I would be better at this because I have like space and grace and patience and interest and curiosity, like, which for me have been important, like necessary things for me as a facilitator. And like other times, like I don't have a lot of those things. And so something I was also thinking is just like, I wonder if there are people who I'm like, I don't know if you can be a facilitator and back to this interest piece, like, I don't know if you want to be a facilitator right now, right? Like you might need to be, but you don't actually want to be because that's just not where you are energy wise. But like, it's possible 5 years from now when like you aren't a new parent who has not slept in 2 years, like that would be a better space for you. So that was just something I was thinking about is like, I'm not sure if it's also like this person will never be versus like this person isn't in a place to be. I don't know. That was just what came to mind for me. We've heard from many people out loud. Is there anybody who wants to share out loud who hasn't shared out loud? I see hesitating faces. Katrina, you thinking about it? Denise, thinking about it? Okay. Yeah. Cool. I will cede my token to anyone who wants it. Does anybody, like, I got one more thing to say out loud before, because we got some tokens on the table. Okay. Okay, well then we're gonna move into our facilitator hat space and say, what do you think of that structure? So we were working Matchstick Conversations, and we did a little different because it's online and you can't actually see people like kind of spend a token or throw a card into the middle or whatever. But any reactions to the process or thoughts on like how that really changed how you showed up or shared than if I just said, let's have a discussion about this topic?
I like the idea of having a set number of contributions. It at least creates a space for everybody, even if they decline. And I thought of one other way to do it virtually, and that was you could have a visual share. You could have people, get an object and share. And so there's a third token if needed.
Another way I've seen people do it is you share once with your camera on, share once with your camera off, and share once out loud. I didn't do that because not everyone has their camera on, but also because we have a bigger group and that was just even more tokens to spend. But yeah, I love that idea too of like something in your camera that isn't you might feature. Yeah. Kat?
Yeah, so I didn't speak during the circle. I was fine to listen and cede my token. I think about this activity a lot because I know the value of having everyone's voice in the room and creating a really lively, rich discussion. And as an introvert, I really struggle with it because I'm not skilled at interrupting. And this is an activity that seems to favor people who are comfortable filling the like 600 millisecond silence that is available in between when one person stopped talking and the next person starts talking. And one way that I've considered doing this in a group that I run is a small shift on how you did it, which I think you had everybody like unmute first or whatnot to indicate they want to speak. And what I'm thinking of doing is having everybody click the raise hand button, so it's clear who hasn't spoken. And then after you speak, you lower your hand, and then you can see only who's left. And that limits the confusion about who has spoken and who hasn't. And another way that I've considered doing it, although it takes away some of the spontaneity, is to then also click the button that says something like make the host's view match everybody else's view, so that everybody can see like which boxes are left according to like what's on my screen. And then to take it another level even deeper, I've also thought about then shuffling, like me shuffling the order so that it's an equitable distribution of like race, gender, age, etc. Because when left to spontaneity, we know socially some people step up and speak first and speak longer. And it's typically people who hold more seats of power in society. So that's
that,
all I want to say about that.
That last piece, the shuffling the order, are you creating an order?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're creating, that's
if it's not like already balanced in random order, then I might move a little bit.
I see. If you're like, follow my screen, and then you're like, oh my God, like every single woman in the workshop is in the last chunk of it, I'm going to
then I would move
order.
people. Exactly.
Got it. I saw a couple different like thumbs up for your raise hand idea. I just wanted to like try that really quick, like so if everybody can find the reactions button at the bottom and then just hit the raise hand. Okay. Yes. Okay. Cool. Just seeing if this, okay, great. And then can you lower your hand if you spoke during Matchstick Conversations? Spoke out loud. Cool. So for my screen, that adjusted everybody like into a particular order. And I just wanted to like make sure that it was doing that on your end as well. Cool. So that's exactly what it would have looked like if we had done it. And I love that suggestion. I think that is really cool. Okay. You can now like lower, you're like, oh, I don't have thoughts though. Andrew does.
Just technically.
Technically.
Yeah, because I'm like chasing down this idea of cat. When somebody has their hand raised, you can't change the order of the video.
Oh, you can only drag them when their hands are not raised. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Which maybe it's but oh man, how could you?
Well, another way we could do it then is without raising hands. If the facilitator drags the order that they want and then says, make everybody's order match mine, and then be like, we're going to share across the top row, across the bottom row, across the next one. It's kind of like being in a circle, maybe.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, that's good. Great.
How do I see the facilitator's view?
It's something that I would have to activate as the facilitator.
Okay.
Like I have to be like, follow my view. And something else you should know about that is everyone's Zoom has to be updated. So like that's something that you can force your participants to do and be like, you can't join this Zoom until you update it. Like you can make that happen, but it would be something you would have to make happen beforehand. And I don't think that everybody's Zoom is updated in order to do that. So the way you do it is you drag windows into a particular order. And then I would say, follow host's order. And if your screen just snapped to a new order, your Zoom is updated. And if it didn't, your Zoom is not updated. So now you know. It also doesn't work on mobile. So there's just a couple of things to like think about. If you're facilitating, you might want to know, who's in what thing, but they're a little like, if somebody's like, I'm on a phone, can someone tell me when it's my turn? Like that would be a, very easy workaround for that.
I wonder, I'm curious, actually, I don't know this about Zoom, but for the reactions, you have the raise hand and then above it, there's like the clap and the thumbs up and the laughing face. Are those the same on everybody's? Because I know when you go to more, there's like all of them. And I was like, wait, is it just the ones you use?
I think it's defaulted to the ones that I think there's a default set and then there's the more option.
I'm wondering if you could use like to build on the raise hand idea, because I love that. if you can use it's like if everybody has to use that at least once within a conversation or a Zoom call, it just because there's so many times like, Kat, when you said the raise hand idea, I wanted to be like, yeah, that was great. I love that idea. And so it's like, how can like everybody has to kind of use it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What you were just saying. So you're thinking about like, okay, you have 3 tokens. You have to use them by the end of the Zoom call, right? So it's actually not for a specific activity or conversation, but it's just like, I would love everybody to share in the chat. I would love you to hit a reaction. I would love if you could share out loud, like at any point, right?
Yeah.
And
it made me think of the crazy juicy reel.
Cozy Juicy Reel.
Yeah. And how you have to use them throughout the game.
Yep. Exactly. So for anybody who hasn't been, there's an online game called Cozy Juicy Reel, and you have these cards, which if you give them to people, it counts for points. But if you hold on to them, they're negative points. And so you're trying to give them to people throughout the time. So yeah, it's a very similar mechanic. And I think that's a really interesting way to use Matchstick Conversations, is to think of it as like something that could wrap around the entire activity versus or your entire session versus a particular part of the session. Anybody want to take us in a different place in this debrief than we have gone so far? Like, I didn't like this at all. I thought it was stifling, or I want to do it so differently because I learned this by being a participant in it.
I have a question. Let's say there are still some people that have not used their tokens. What is a gentle way of sort of reminding them that, we only have like a little bit of time left, and, you haven't used 2 of your tokens out of 3, not to put anybody in a bad place, because I have a team where I have some very quiet people, and it is hard to get them to participate. Very hard. I really have to kind of pull them out, and I want to do that gently in this kind of a situation. So I was just looking for some ideas.
I think the ones that come to mind for me is that like Kat's raise hand structure, it nudges you without forcing. Personally, I do think that you could also be like, here are 3 ways to participate out loud in the chat with reactions. I want you to spend at least 2, right? So that you're giving them some agency on like how they get to do that. My other thing, you know what? I'm going to kick it over to Renee and see if she's got a completely different idea.
So sorry, I went to say something, I lost my voice. For those of you who are extroverts on the call, I would also just kind of use it as an aha moment of checking in with yourself, right? Like, am I going too fast? Because introversion and extroversion is a spectrum. So for example, the speed that we're going right now is a little outside of my comfort zone, but I'm code switching in the other direction. Somebody who's much more of an introvert than I might be having difficulty getting their word in, so to speak. The other piece that I would say is that you can, and I'll end with this, you can certainly, aside from holding longer spaces, you can say, okay, I'm going to hold a little longer space at this particular point, because I haven't heard from a few of you. And so I just want to make sure that I'm holding space to be able for you to get your voices in.
Thank you for naming all that.
Thank you. Thank you for
Daniel.
the ideas.
Daniel, I see you if you wanted to share.
Yeah, I think it follows a little bit about what Renee had to say. When especially when it's in physical, I think the principles are the same. So I'll break people up into smaller groups to give them that. And I think especially when you're an extrovert, like probably most of us are, don't give more weight to the voice, especially when you have more of the introverts, introspective kind of learning folks. That chat is just as equal. Or if not more so for them than it is voice for us. So I think there's ways to draw it out, but I see this large group, and I'll give you an example. I'm an extrovert, and Myron stole my thought. No, Myron actually was he said what I was going to say. So the voice part of it wasn't as important as what as what the writing was. So there's different motivations maybe why people aren't doing it, besides they're just not chiming in. Somebody else may have already reflected that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think, so I'm reading some of the chats that have been coming in while we've been having this conversation, and Denise said, like, encourage use of chat and give opportunity to give feedback after the fact. And so one thing, like, this is the most meta thing, and I'm not doing it to be meta, but like, you can read what people have in the chat out loud, right? And like, doing that to me also is a way to be like, okay, this idea is great, and people don't necessarily, you can still hear it and we can echo it back into the large group. And I think what I really appreciated, Renee, in your naming was like, speed matters. And I think we've been doing we've kind of just gotten the like raise hand thing that wasn't an explicit invitation, but it can be an explicit invitation of like, hey, if you have a thought, like while someone else is talking, or you just want like space to think, like, you could do the raise hand, but also you could say, I'm going to hold space, and then we're just going to take 30 seconds to pause because so much has been thrown out there. I loved that, like, attention to speed, because I go very fast. And I think that's really important. And I saw some people nodding their heads of like, that speed is crucial to me chiming in. So I'm gonna pause this conversation because I want us to do one more thing before the hour is up. And I'll admit that an hour is also part of the speed, but it's like ambition plus time. That's really, I think, what determines the speed. So let's not blame the hour on it entirely. I wanted to do kind of a like meta debrief of this session briefly. And here's what I'm thinking. I would love you to take 2 minutes to reflect on, basically, there's this card called What's the MVP? And What's the MVP is basically, MVP stands for minimal viable product. And I think of that as like, what is absolutely necessary for this thing to like work and be worth doing? And my question to all of you is like, what is the minimal viable product for the playground? Like, was it, how many people, how long, who leads it, like how many cards we get through, or things that I'm not even considering. Like, was this the minimal viable product, or can we actually take away things from today's session and still have something that you're like, oh yeah, I'm like really stoked about this. I think this would be really fun. Or are there things that like needed to be there today to reach a place where you're like, this is something that I would want to come to over and over again, get a lot of value from. So I'm going to have you do a minute paper. So pull out something to write on. Could be a piece of paper, could be notes, could be a Word document. And I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes for you to just reflect on, like, what do you think the minimal viable product is for the Facilitator Cards Playground? And then we'll do the next thing. We'll collect some of those ideas as we kind of move into wrap up. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and put 2 minutes on the timer. So what I would love is if you typed that up and you're comfortable sharing it with everyone, throw what you just shared in the chat. If you're comfortable sharing it with me directly, you can send me a direct message in the chat. And if you don't want to do that, or you didn't type it, you can also send me a picture if you're like, I'm very comfortable sharing it with you, but I'm not going to type it right now. We could do that. And I'll just invite anyone who wants to like reflect something back or share out loud rather than directly in the chat. If anybody wants to do that, I'm going to leave like 2-3 minutes just to get a few of these ideas into the group space. And I would love Anybody who hasn't shared out loud, I would love to hear from you first, if you want, and if not, then we will open it up to everybody. All right, I'm gonna kick it over to Myron and Kat.
Hey, so I'm definitely going to be using the language playground in our community of practice, in addition to the things that I shared. So I gave the MVP thing. I think this is a really, really great framing of creating safety for people to try things out. This was brilliant.
Okay, cool. Kat.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. All the events that I've been to with FC have been great. My thoughts for the MVP are one, just keeping it recurring so that each, whether it's weekly or whatnot, just so we know exactly when and where to go when we want this kind of interaction. And then the biggest thing that I think would also help is if there was time at the end, whether it was like 10 or 15 minutes, doesn't even have to be at the end, it could be in the middle, whatever. For people to ask for feedback on an exercise they're planning on leading a certain way, and we just don't have another facilitator to gut check on. So for example, I mentioned I'm planning on trying this certain way, and Andrew happened to know oh, if you do it that way, you can't do this thing. It's that's the kind of thing I would have totally missed and had an oh shit moment in my workshop when I realized, oh, Zoom doesn't do that thing. So being able to just have that little discussion to say I'm thinking of doing X, what do y'all think? And get 2 minutes of feedback is priceless. It's so brilliant, because when else do we get to be in a room with all facilitators? It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Tim, I'm going to do Tim, and then we're going to go to Nadia. And while that's happening, I'm going to put a link in the chat, or here, we don't even need to do the link. I would love to know, in terms of recurring pace, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, or less. Can you just put one of those words in the chat if you have a feeling of I would love this to be reoccurring, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or less than monthly? Okay, great, that's happening. Perfect. Tim, you got the floor.
Sure. You said minimal viable product. For me, it doesn't matter if you cover one or more than one, but at least one. I think you did three cards today from your stack. But even if you just do one card, discuss, practice, explore options, and provide feedback so that you can maybe take it away and use it, or it be usable for you in a group later on. That to me is a minimal viable product. So you don't have to do more than one, as long as you have enough information and feedback from using that one that it's useful.
Beautiful. All right, Nadia.
I thought this was great. I've been on a number of other chats like this, but the discussion wasn't as intimate. I thought the number of people is probably the key to this, not too many people, so that everybody gets the chance if they want to share something. And I also thought that doing 3 cards was probably the maximum, because you do want to have all that discussion and all that feedback. And I like Kat's idea that ask a question maybe at the end where you have something coming up and you want to just ask other people who are familiar with facilitation. So yeah, I thought it was great. Bi-weekly for me.
Okay, awesome. Kat, I loved your suggestion. Also, you already named the time. You named it as a gut check. So I love that name. Maybe it's a little visceral for some folks, but I really liked it. So I'm socking away that suggestion and going to let it marinate. I love that people are bi-weekly, okay, all right, I'm taking that into consideration and we will look into that. So I'll end and wrap us up to say that we did Declarative Pairs. We did Matchstick Conversations. We did kind of a mashup of these two. We did what's the MVP in a minute paper. You can do it kind of more sticky note generator is how it's written, is kind of write all the things, organize them, vote, kind of create it. And we really shortened it, I think, by doing it kind of minute paper style. So I will send out, there's a couple of different things I will send out. I will send out a picture of all of these so that you can find that little mini deck if you have facilitator cards. I will send out the chat because dang, this chat is so valuable. And I really, really appreciate that. So I will send out a permanent link to the chat. Like the chat will live in my Notion somewhere, and then you'll get a link to that. And I also recorded this magic. So that will go on the Facilitator Cards YouTube channel. And, you know, if you just want to hang out with some cool people again, you can watch it again, or you can send it to other folks if you would like. This has been so fun for me. One explicit invitation I do want to make before we close out is we're going to do another one because this was great. I learned a lot. And I would love to know and to invite you, like, do you want to facilitate the thing, right? Because Kat, what you were saying about like, well, if I want to try this next week, like, can I, you know, like you can talk to somebody in theory and get a gut check, but I think the like real magic is when it's like, all right, I'm going to try this. Let's find out if it works. Can you do a quick, like, does anybody know if they're like, oh yeah, I would totally take this time to actually facilitate something, or like, I really loved being a participant, I don't think that would likely happen. If you want to drop a thought in the chat for me of like, I really liked being a participant, I don't think I would facilitate, or I might take you up on facilitating eventually, but you should just keep doing these until, you know, regardless if you get people to facilitate or not. I'd love to know your thoughts, response, reaction to that. Because that's where the idea came from. But I'm also realizing like we can all just learn so much by anyone facilitating it. And I'm very happy to always be the guinea pig. If the guinea pig, I don't know why we pick guinea pigs for that. Anyway, I'm always happy to like do the thing so that we can process the thing is what I'm realizing. Okay, so there's 18 new messages for me to read. I'll just say it was so fun kicking off 2022 with all of you. Thank you so much for participating, for being part of this experiment, and for sharing in so many ways throughout the call. I will send you all of those things. I'm very happy to like chat. I know there's a few folks who are like, I don't know what facilitator cards are, but this sounds fun. If you're one of those folks and you want like the 5-minute, you know, intro to like what the heck we've been talking about, please stick around and I'm very happy to give you a personal one of those. Otherwise, we have events the rest of this month, which you can find on our Luma page. I will send you a link if you want to come to another, and keep an eye out in your email for when we do this again, because we'll do it again. Okay. My favorite way to sign off, if everybody can unmute, we're going to do a 3, 2, 1, bye, and we'll actually say it out loud all together, and we'll wave, and then you can end it. You can end the call simultaneously if you want. So, okay, ready? So 3, 2, 1, bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you, Jen.